Okay, yep. Nice.
So, yeah, man, TexarkanaFYI.com and all the podcasts and Hornhog Radio and the stuff. You're familiar. You guys know John Tennison. John, been around here for a while, and you've got a movie you've been working on.
It's been kicking my butt. I've been editing it lately, but I have literally hundreds of hours of footage, a lot of my own footage, as well as archival footage from the 1980s and some audio recordings from the 1970s that I'm trying to compile into a 3-episode sesquicentennial cut.
Okay. So here's my question. I've seen your poster that you make,
Yes.
and you call it the town.
The place that forgot it existed, and then this subtitle is A Texarkana Reckoning.
A Texarkana Reckoning. And so I see that, but there's like a Godzilla creature.
Yes, there's a giant monster in the sky. Sure.
So I guess that's just kind of explain to me what we're looking at.
Yeah, so it was, first of all, I knowingly came up with the concept for that poster and had a real artist create it for me. But the idea was to catch people's attention and have it flying over the what's clearly the skyline of Texarkana.
Yeah, I think it's like the grin you can see.
Exactly, and the funny thing, let me give a little background on that. That was actually, that particular vantage point was one that I searched around Mr. Etheridge, the photographer who's done so much great photography work. He had a drone shot. Eric, right? Yeah. Eric had a shot from that same vantage point. I said, oh my gosh, that is the best single shot to capture the most impressive skyline of downtown Texarkana that I could. I mean, everywhere else you go, you start the bonus stuff to drop off, but that shot was it. So I wanted to have it in the poster. So that's why that particular angle exists. So I took up my little drone and got essentially duplicated the shot that he had in another photograph, and then supplied it to an artist who then combined that with this image of this giant flying razorback. So it is Godzilla-ish, but it's meant to be an homage to the giant monster movies, but also a metaphor. So Godzilla was a metaphor for the unintended consequences of nuclear energy experimentation and bombing, and then King Kong was a metaphor for racism, or the Atlantic slave trades.
So tell me about what is the movie? Is it a documentary?
It is a documentary, yeah, and the poster can suggest otherwise. Some people might look at it and say, "Is this a monster movie?"
Yeah, is it something? But
it is a documentary. Yeah, it's actually a very serious documentary, and the poster is strictly metaphorical. It's meant to symbolize the idea of it's meant to allude to the phrase "when pigs fly," and that phrase came to mind when I and another alumnus from Arkansas High School, Eddie Sheffield, we were researching the origin of the high school's use of the Razorback mascot, and I, like many of my generation, even before then, maybe at least back to the late 1950s, were taught with this idea that we had the Razorbacks before the University of Arkansas, and that somehow they got the Razorback idea from us. Turns out that's not the case, and the evidence does not suggest it's true. But in order to build evidence of that, or see if there was evidence, Eddie Sheffield went back and looked at old yearbooks from Arkansas High School, and then I, in parallel, went back and looked at old newspaper articles and yearbooks from the University of Arkansas, and it is almost certainly the case that the University of Arkansas were being called Razorbacks before Arkansas High School was.
Now, without giving away the movie,
Sure, yeah.
I guess kind of walk us through.
Well, it's a movie.
It's the place that time forgot.
Well, the place that forgot existed, which is inspired by that title too. You're right. The time forgot. It's inspired by that title. It's that idea of there's amnesia, or at least forgetfulness for certain facts of the past. So the reason that title came to mind is that Texarkana, rightfully so, celebrates a sesquicentennial from the starting date of 1873, December 8th. But what that is actually the sesquicentennial of is this: it's the sesquicentennial, or the 150th anniversary of the sale of town lots. It's not actually the sesquicentennial of Texarkana.
The first lot sold was the McCartney.
Right.
Official. That was 73. Yeah.
So, but it ended up being celebrated as if it were the sesquicentennial of Texarkana. But what happened in 2015? I found an 1856 newspaper article that showed that the formal town site of Texarkana was formally established by 3 railroad companies on December 6th of 1856. And there were records available for me to be able to discover that, but it wasn't something that had been appreciated by the major Texarkana historians like Wilbur Smith or Beverly Rowe and others, at least in what they had published. So that's where that phrase, the place that forgot it existed, because really it makes sense to at least consider Texarkana's origin at least as early as 1856, because they were
Yeah, it was a railroad camp.
Well,
for a long time.
Well, but in 1856, it was at that point it was not even a railroad camp. It was a town site of 960 acres, 1/3 of which was in Texas, 2/3 of which was in Arkansas. But it was formally established. But all the railroad directors came there. They had a formal meeting. They then published their meeting and their annual reports. But then the Civil War happened. And some of the people died. There was a literal forgetfulness. So
how much of Texarkana was in the Civil War that you've learned from your research?
Well,
only because Washington, Arkansas at one time.
Well, okay, so to qualify the question, so when the Civil War started, 1861, right? When it started, Texarkana was still just a town site. It was there. They had cleared railroad quarters and right-of-ways. There was definitely an area that was understood to be the Texarkana area. There was a specific area of acreage that was understood to be the 960-acre town site. So all of that existed during the Civil War, but it became neglected. So during the Civil War, all the corridors that had been cleared starting in 1857, so quite a ways earlier, they started growing up again. They became abandoned, and they had to be re-cleared once Texarkana got restarted in the late 1860s. Once the clearing got started in the late 1860s. So there wasn't really any substantial construction during the Civil War.
What would be the most surprising thing that people may get from the film?
Well, for me, that was substantial. I mean, just the idea that we celebrate. People think of Texarkana's birthday as being 1873, and that's really the birthday of the opening of the town site.
Well, it's and the official things were stamped.
Well, yeah, lots. It was like, to me, I think of it as a pizza. Texarkana, the pizza was created in 1856 at least, but it got sliced up in 1873. But slicing the pizza does not cause the pizza to come into existence. It's just like saying, this is going to be your slice, this is going to be mine. So it wasn't a what they call philosophers might call an ontological event where something just comes into existence. But really, I mean, you could even
think of it as something that stands out when you're mentioning the dates, because I've always been a downtown guy and the history and all this and that.
But covered all the time.
Yeah, but we're talking about 1856. It was in 1836 the actual Mexican line ran right through the middle of downtown Texarkana, the territorial line.
Oh yeah,
Just kind of.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I know I might have room for something like that in the document, because the U.S. when Texas was annexed into the United States, the official surveyors went from Logansport and put mileposts all the way up from Logansport all the way up to the Red River in 1841. So that and some of those, I think the original mileposts still exist, and they buried some of the markers got destroyed supposedly. They buried bottles at every milepost. So one of the mileposts, actually it's substantial for Texarkana, was the 97th milepost, because that was the milepost on the border that the surveyor basically did 3 potential lines about how the railroad track was going to come into Texarkana, only one of which was used.
Was that at one time, because University of Texas had done this study, and they had one of the markers between the Hotel Grim and the Rialto building, right there.
There was one they found at that point, or
of course we were doing the museum things downtown at the time, and just this metal obelisk appeared.
Oh, interesting.
With a little barcode. You hit it, it kind of explained the whole story.
Is it still there?
No, it was only there for a little while.
Oh, wow.
It was a study that they were doing.
That's it. So they were saying that was one of them where one of the mile markers had been.
Now, when are we going to see this movie?
Sure, yeah. So the plan has been for a long time, and still is the case, that December 8th, 2023, so December 8th of next year, at 6 p.m. at the Silvermoon Theater. It's going to start hopefully promptly at 6 p.m. And it's going to be 3 episodes, about an hour and a half each, spread over 5 hours. So it's going to be a little marathon session. It's going to be free of charge. That's the other thing too. I just want to basically say, if you show up, and we will fill up the theater until the fire marshal says we can't.
How many local people in it?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I wish
I know you are always talking to stuff.
Yeah, I would say 30 or more. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people myself, some of whom were no longer with us, like Betty Palmer. She's over 100 years old when I interviewed her. David Millett is interviewed among others. So some people are no longer with us. Rule Beasley of Beasley Music actually went to California and interviewed him for over 10 hours in Los Angeles. Only a small fraction of which is going to end up in the documentary. And that's the tough part, the editing, just because there's so much. Rule Beasley just a wealth of information, very sharp. So it's going to be very easy to take almost anything from the interview and have that be interesting.
I thought, and I'll be honest with you, when I thought John Tennison's putting together this documentary, I remembered your musical.
Texarkana.
Are you John?
I'm John. Yes, sir.
Collins Ferguson.
Oh, Collins. Oh my gosh, yes. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Hey,
We
Collins,
grew up
wel-
a few
welcome to
blocks
welcome to
apart.
live video.
Thank you. Yeah.
Come around. No.
Join us.
Come around waving at us. You didn't notice? No, Collins.
We're casual.
Yeah, but Colin's been here most all his
Yeah,
life,
yeah,
so
sure,
yeah,
sure.
he's familiar with you too, and so
My
we
crazy
talked,
family.
well, we've talked about this and looking forward to it. But at the time when I first saw John's putting together a movie, I thought about that 24-hour marathon music.
That was insane. I can't do that. I don't think I have the stamina to do it. It was 17 hours, but
Was
still.
it? Well, I knew it was.
I had to set it up for almost like a half a day or more, then the 17 hours, and then break it down for another 12 hours. It was crazy.
Have you heard if much more has been done on the municipal auditorium?
I got a sense that there was this kind. And John Butek, I know might have some more knowledge about that than me, but there were certain things, some high production quality events that seem to have occurred there. But I'm not aware if that's continuing now or not. I mean, my hope was that it would, but I haven't.
Well, I know David and a few of the others were, hardcore on getting that to where it was going. And
Yeah.
It just seems to kind of slowed a little bit.
I gather that happened, but I don't have the latest information.
So this is a positive movie.
Yes, thank you for asking. Yeah, people have been concerned about that.
And
yeah.
I wanted to get to that because people are like, oh, well, because of the Razorback
And reckoning,
They're
the
like,
word reckoning.
what does reckoning mean?
Right.
Is this going to be all of our dirty laundry?
Yeah.
But it's not.
No, it's for the most part, it's by and far a celebratory document, celebratory movie. I am trying to be uncensored, so I do cover some difficult issues like race relations and a lynching, one particular famous lynching that occurred horrifically. Ed Coy, yeah. So a gentleman was literally burned at the stake, but there's some misconceptions about that lynching that I'm going to clear from the movie. That they're not like things that change the essence of what was done, but it's just certain things about how.
Oh, it was a horrible thing done, but I've covered that in my tours that
Yes.
I did downtown there for a long time, and that it was a horrible, horrific event. But by the time it got so far out of Texarkana, it went from there were 100 people there to there were 9,000 people there. By the time it got to Europe, there were 10,000. Texarkana had like 300 people there. So I mean, it's
Well, and that's an interesting point. Yeah, because I do try to use like newspapers from the time it happened and try to make the best, convey the best idea about how many people were there. But yeah, you don't know for sure.
And I thought it was a good example of media today, actually, because I mean, here's the story, but by the time it gets to Dallas, to Chicago, to New York, it's.
Well, but it is worth
grows.
it's worth thinking about. I mean, considering that those processes, like there was another black man who was lynched in Paris, Texas, after Ed Floyd, and they created a tourism industry. I mean, they had people coming by train to see that. So there were a lot of people, unfortunately, from that it was a spectacle that people wanted to see, and I think that was more advertised maybe than Ed Floyd.
And I think I like that. I don't know how to say this without just being stupid, but I'm stupid a lot. You've got to cover some of the worst to show how the best came about.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's that arc. It's a positive arc. It's a redemptive, positive arc overall. We have another person he was the quarterback of my high school, Clint Brewster, and he was interviewed. He went to Texas Southern in Houston, and I interviewed him, and he told me that one time he and I believe it was his dad or his uncle, I believe it was his father, but they were driving down Jefferson, right by Arkansas High School, and there was literally a KKK rally in Jefferson Park, right by the high school.
Really?
And I couldn't believe it. This was 1979, and I doubted it. I said, "Oh my God, could that really be true?" And lo and behold, it was. And guess who was speaking there? David Duke. He was at this KK rally by Arkansas High School. So, but the thing is, that despite that, Clint Brewster now says he's going to move back to Texarkana. His plan is coming back home. So there's a sense that there's a positive belief of what Texarkana can be and its potential. So that ultimately this positive redemptive arc, and I too believe that. I mean, I have never been able to and never wanted to dissociate myself from Texarkana. It's my hometown.
Yeah, you've always been a Texarkana guy.
Yeah.
And so and that was the thing that people are like, is it a horror movie? Is this going to paint the negative? Because
Definitely.
what was it, 1963 we were declared the rat capital of the world?
I remember hearing the story. Yeah, I don't know the year, but that sounds about right.
Yeah, they used to give bounties for rat tails.
And they had that rat. They had that hearse or something. It was a ratmobile thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just like anywhere and everywhere else, there's the good, the bad. I'm not gonna lie to you, and I think you and I are kind of the same in the sense that we probably spent the first half of our life trying to be somewhere else, only to realize the last half of my life here I'm struggling to stay home.
Yeah,
You know?
you appreciate the good when you see when you live. Like I've lived on the East Coast for 4 years and California for 8 years before coming back to Texas, Arkansas. So you know what you miss. You know what you had that you no longer have, and there's always, you can always make the grass greener. But I mean, Texarkana, there's so much potential. And I one of the things that's positive in interviews, I have a segment on music manufacturing in Texarkana. So I did a panel with four
musicians, sports
excellence too. Sure.
I mean, we've got so much talent, so much knowledge and intelligence in Texarkana. Bill, gosh, I can't think of it. Big NASA rocket surgeon.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's
from
how,
Texarkana.
I mean, rocket scientist.
Yeah, science, right? Yeah, exactly right. I like to combine those. That's
He's a lot more educated than I am. So,
so it is rocket surgery.
Yeah, in a sense. But so many intelligent people. I mean, genius people coming out of Texarkana, and I see that having traveled around, with the other things I do. Not a lot of people know what I do outside the city limits, but
I don't know what all you do here.
Well, you don't tell them.
But you have to tell me.
With a lot of that, it's I like being home. I mean, it is a better place, and I'm looking forward to the movie. So this is going to be again in January,
December.
December.
Yeah. So December 8th of 2023 is the sesquicentennial of the town lot sales. But there's going to be a whole week of events that emphasize Texarkana history. So this really does.
Is this when they're getting the time capsule up to?
Actually, no. That's going to be in April. So April of next year, April 14th and 15th, they're going to dig up the time capsule on the 14th, and then try to formally present whatever's intact on the very next day, the 15th, on that weekend. So that'll be an awesome event as well.
Right on. Now, is there anything else that you're looking to do with the movie? I mean, something that you're at, or anything that you're reaching out, information you're looking for?
Well, I have more footage than I can possibly use, but what I hope the editing process is I'm going to edit as much as I can to create what I call the sesquicentennial cut by December 8th of 2023, which I'll show at the Silvermoon. And based on the response to that, and based on any feedback I get, I eventually want to have a distribution cut, which might have more than just 3 episodes. But because I could do 10 episodes. Whether I will be able to do that or not remains to be seen. But if there was any major distributor, Netflix, and you connected to Netflix or folks like that, if you like what you see.
Oh yeah, they follow.
Yeah, please. Well, who knows? Who knows why?
Yeah, you never know. But you're very talented. It's hard to say what you are. How would you describe you?
Most people in Texarkana say John
historian,
he's crazy.
Musician.
Well, I dabble.
Director now.
I like to dabble in all these things. I have some attention deficit issues, so I get bored with certain things, and just this is the first time I've tried to make a documentary that would be a feature-length thing as opposed to just a little short video on YouTube or something. But yeah, I love music. Music is almost like a religion to me, and I feel closer to the divine in music probably than anything. This documentary is a labor of love just because I feel like in the process of researching history, I've learned that, wait a minute, that's not exactly right. I was taught something that's quite it's actually not accurate. And it wasn't just the Razorbacks, other things that we believe, mostly because we just heard the same story over and over. That's the most common thing. You hear something, you repeat it, and that it gets caught like that.
Late 1800s and early 19s. Man, Texarkana was an exciting place.
Oh,
You know, and tell me if I'm wrong. This is the way I
doubt you are.
understood it. The original Arkansas-Texas rivalry that moved to the football game actually started in the sheriff's departments.
Now, I don't know. That might be it.
There was a shootout across state line.
Oh, across state line. Interesting.
Between the counties.
Well, I do know that Wilbur Smith, who's now deceased, but the famous Texarkana historian known as Mr.
Right.
Texarkana,
Oh,
he
the awards that are named after.
even today, yeah. He frequently repeated the idea that state line, the curse of state line, that state line was a curse. And of course, he was referring to various types of dysfunctionality and conflict and divisiveness that resulted because of an arbitrary political boundary.
Well, you know how legislation has gone back at the time. If I crossed state line, I'm out of your jurisdiction.
You could, right, little Chicago and come over,
Yeah,
stay
so
safe from the.
You got Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas. It was a pretty,
Yeah.
it was a wild place.
Well, and that's interesting about the dish. I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of provided kind of some fodder for the flame of rivalry. But as far as the football rivalry, I know that before Arkansas High and Texas High became rivals, there was a prep school, a private school that Texas High was playing, and that's something you're going to learn more about in the documentary. But basically, that rivalry directly led into the Arkansas Texas High rivalry.
I see. Do you keep us up to date on what's going on with as we get a little bit closer? Maybe we can get a little footage to share.
I'm gonna, yeah, and people have been asking about a trailer. I've been very secretive about trailers. I've been very non-specific, but I'm probably going to create maybe a montage of faces and of the people I've interviewed, so people say, oh yeah, I know that person. But I think I've interviewed. It's been somewhat arbitrary in the sense I haven't interviewed people that I know who I find interesting, but I also think I've interviewed some of the most brilliant people in Texarkana and interesting people. And I knew Wilbur Smith when he was alive, but I didn't interview him then. But I do have access to audio tapes that he and my granddad were good friends. They were working with the Boy Scout Troop One, and there's some recordings of them that are I think nostalgic to people.
World War II. Do you have that in there?
Yes. Oh, let's just say definitely. In a way that is superlative.
I haven't been back down to Union Station in a little while, but there for a while on the back they had the painting, so many miles to LA, so many miles to Chicago, and the significance behind that being that every U.S. troop that served in the war, World War II, be it Pacific, they were going to California, be it Europe, they were going to Chicago. But all of them came through there, and if you go into Union Station to the ticket windows, they use that far ticket window on the left. You can feel the indentions of where they stomped their feet when they stepped up to get their orders.
Interesting.
A lot of them didn't know which way they were going until they got to Texarkana.
Well, yeah.
So I've seen the photos of them lined up and down the street with their duffel bags. Texarkana,
as you know, I'm sure, but was a very important crossroads in World War II. I mean, the depot and the ordnance plant, of course, being very important. But there was strong emphasis on Texarkana as a supporter of the war, during World War II, and some very, very special moments.
This is going to be a super film, and I think if you have that hometown pride or just curiosity even, the bad and the good, there's going to be a little bit of all of it, but you'll find in the end it's a positive film.
I promise you. You can tar and feather me if that's not true.
Well, don't say that, because they might.
It'll be true. It'll be true, I promise.
Him? No.
Yeah, me, not Jeff. Not Jeff, yeah.
But no, listen, thanks for coming up
thank
here
you. Thank you for
and talking to us
I
about it a
appreciate
little bit. We're looking forward to it. But this has been building, so we just wanted to know a little bit more about it, and I thank you for taking the time. I know you, especially here in the holiday season, you're kind of all over the place, aren't you?
Well, I think I just happened to be coming through town today, and I might not be back until April, so I'm glad we're able to get together today.
Well, fantastic. Again, thank you, man.
Thank
we're
you,
looking
Jeff.
forward to
Appreciate
it.
Man. Thanks a lot.
December
8th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Friday night at the Silvermoon Theater on West Broad.
All right. Thank you.